Hello, welcome to any combo lords joining me today on my bonus, despite the more subscriber count, channel. And here in my room today, a little late to be bothering neighbors with mathematical rantings in my time zone here. Despite people thinking I'm a crazy neighbor, surely with the bubbles and the clock fires and such, I do try and respect, not being too loud when it's going to be striking midnight during our stream out there. And I did throw some of my own beats I've made in the background on my phone on a pretty crappy old speaker, my phone's, just to get a little background noise and not bother any other household members quite as much. Today, the reason I'm doing a little bonus stream, we can see I have some holidays pulled up, which I always have fun with. Why not appreciate holidays in a somewhat mocking way? Because, I've made episodes mocking our calendar system on the main combo class channel. One of my longer episodes was about an ideal or more ideal calendar system that maybe not even ideal, but better than the one we have right now, which involved 13 months, strangely. Normally, when we have a 12 in the thing, it works pretty well. I like dozens, but 12 months does not turn out to be the ideal. Somebody asked why I love clocks, and that's a long story. Maybe we'll get into that later today. I'll see if I have time for that in the later portion of the stream or not. The main reason I wanted to do holidays today is that I realized not only is today, for me still, most people it's probably tomorrow who are watching this, or the holiday we're talking about is probably your yesterday for some of you. June 18th, or 28th, that it is still technically today for me, is known as Tau Day sometimes, after this number called Tau. And some people propose that this number is a better version of pi that could be used as an alternative and maybe even taught instead of pi. I'm not very strongly in that camp. While it is a cool number, I will say that as we'll look at it today, we'll find reasons why it should be taught, but also maybe reasons why pi is cool enough that we're not going to want to kick it out of any systems. They're both two sides of the same coin in a way. And not only is it Tau Day, but I also realized that we could call it an entirely different mathematical holiday. It's called Tau Day because it's 628, or 28-6, and how some people write the dates, but a lot of places like where I'm from write 6/28 to say what date it is here. And that's kind of close to the decimal representation of twice pi. This number tau, that really is just twice pi, but does have many equations in which it can be simpler than pi, and others in which it's sloppier. The beginning of that decimal is 6.28, and while it's completely dependent on both the way it's written in base 10 and where that lands in how we write calendar dates, still kind of fun to have a mathematical holiday on your page here. But if we're going for 6 and 28 as the core of today's date, there's another mathematical thing we've talked about a bunch where 6 and 28 come up a bunch, which would be dependent on the calendar system, but not dependent on our base. A time where the numbers 6, 6th month, 28th day, 6 and 28 are fundamental numbers of a certain type. They're called perfect numbers. And I have made, some episodes and content where we've gone into perfect numbers to a degree. But as a quick refresher, what they do is their most easy to describe main trait, their definitive trait, is that a perfect number has all of its divisors apart from itself, all the positive factors of itself, add up to itself exactly. And other numbers might have their factors add up to less than them. The number 9, its factors apart from itself are 1 and 3 that only add to 4. The number 12 has factors that add up to more than itself. And those are called deficient numbers, where it adds up to less than themselves, or abundant numbers, where it adds up to more, or perfect numbers, when you're right on the line when it adds up to yourself. There's also ones called multi-perfect numbers, because if we count all the divisors, we could say we needed all the divisors to add up to twice the number, including itself. And then we could say, do any numbers have all their divisors add up to 3 times themselves? Or all the divisors apart from themselves add up to twice themselves? The answer to those ones are the tri-perfect numbers, the smallest of which is 120, the long 100. But as far as the normal main perfect numbers go, which, to note, as I have explained, they are linked to the largest prime numbers ever discovered. The type of prime that is the biggest prime humans know, like I think 8 or 9 out of the top 10 biggest primes, including the top few, are a type called Mersenne primes. Technically means they're 1 less than a power of 2. I like to think of them as the primes that are just strings of 1s in binary. And they have a 1-to-1 link with perfect numbers. You can do a little formula where every perfect number is an exact correlation with every Mersenne prime. We know 51 of each. When we discover a 52nd, hopefully, it'll be both. It'll give us, due to the formula. All perfect numbers are also triangular. So 6 is 1 plus 2 plus 3. 28 is the sum up through 7. Not vice versa. There's way more triangular numbers than perfect numbers, but every perfect number is one of the triangulars. And these are the only 2 perfect numbers. Under 496 is the next one. And then it goes to 8,000 something, and then I think in the millions. In fact, if we just look up, just to make sure we get a good little resource on this for a moment of how big they get. Perfect numbers are going to get quite big after these first few. You get 6, 28, 496, 8128, and then this number that is in the 33 millions, and then this number that is in the 8 trillions, or is that trillion? No, 8 billions. Then we get up to trillions before long. So there's only 51 of these known. The first 2 are 6 and 28. I always give 6 credit. The fact that 1 plus 2 plus 3 add to 6, that does make it perfect because those are its divisors. But we'll talk about that in other contexts because those are the first 3 numbers. So 6 is super powerful by being built by the first 3. You can also multiply the first 3 numbers and get 6. So 6 gets a lot of credit. 28 sometimes gets underlooked. I would normally consider 28, if it wasn't a perfect number and wasn't triangular from that and such and not linked to a Mersenne prime, could be seen as one of the more boring numbers in the 20s. It is 2 times 2 times 7. Sounds kind of random. But it's not random because perfect numbers are rare and cool. Now, these are a love of many mathematicians who study number theory from way back in the day. These were studied from ancient mathematicians who knew the first few, studied by modern people who like number theory. There's a lot of open conjectures, like we've only discovered even ones, but we haven't proven there can't be an odd one. We think there could be an infinite amount, but it's not known. A lot of open questions about these, including when are we going to find the 52nd that will probably be linked to a larger prime than any prime number? Well, it will be linked to a prime, probably one larger than any prime we know yet. Now, to anyone who says 629, don't worry. Part of our philosophical mood for today is that almost any day could be a mathematical holiday. We already saw 628 was a mathematical holiday in 2 ways. As long as we allow ourselves to, have the calendar date not only be a little arbitrary, but get even more arbitrary by allowing base 10y stuff, like the decimal of tau. Now, with stuff like that, I also noted I missed Pi Day on a stream because I was actually eating pie with a friend and watching the movie Pi, which, by the way, good movie, but they get pi radically wrong. They only get a few decimal places right in the opening credits of the movie called Pi. It's like, come on. It was made a while ago, so it might have been harder to look up on the internet. But if you're going to make a movie called Pi, and it's even a good movie in my opinion, like pretty experimental and weird, but I find that cool for a movie. You didn't even go to the library to make sure that your opening credits are wrong? Like, where's this picture of the opening credits? Look how few digits they get right. So they're running through like as if we know like 1 billion digits of pi. I don't even know if they knew this many digits of pi when the movie was made, but they at least knew that after 3.1415926.5, there's a 3, not a 2. They got it in it's an opening credit, the opening sequence, basically. Maybe it's an experimental value they obtained. Maybe it was intentional because the movie is about weird interpretations of things and could have been intentional. I think they just thought people, for some reason, weren't paying that much attention. There's a lot of times where movies get pi wrong. There's some times where I saw a picture of one where it's just like 3.1423456789. They just like sometimes give up and just start stringing digits together. And I think somebody noted that here, don't quote me on this part, but I think I read that bits of this are just a copy of earlier bits. Like at some point they just copied a bunch of text, which doesn't necessarily mean it's not an experimental value they got, because that could have been a copied bit from like a fraction that approximates pi. Maybe there's a fraction that's close to pi decimal. I don't know. Little off. So a lot of people are doing cool little reactions and comments. I love you all. I know it's a little later than some of my normal streams. Hopefully, maybe that includes more random time zones and stuff. In any case, we have dropped some random bonus videos recently too. So, you know, if you missed some of the stream later, there's a couple bonus videos I put out on this channel recently too. Just some random number stuff I was fiddling with. The main things to look forward to, of course, apart from, in the long term, I have many wild things for you to look forward to. The main things that you can always know to look forward to are my combo class main channel episodes. Last one came out a few days ago about the Fibonacci sequence on clocks, or in mods. And the next one will be coming out before long. So, Tau Day. Back to Tau. Tau is 2 pi. So, a lot of people think that Tau could even make some equations easier. It's true when you look at certain equations that Tau works better. Now, really, a lot of these equations, we could plug in various fractions or multiples of pi, perhaps even powers of pi, because circles work in a sort of circular way. And although some things that approach a value of something need to approach the right thing, for example, on a graph of some common functions like tangent, sine, and cosine, these repeat with a full period of tau, and they sort of have a positive stretch of pi length and then a stretch of another stretch of pi length where they're negative. So here we could see if you wanted to see the whole cycle of one of these, tau might be better, and then you have tau and you have half of the cycle is positive. But here's an argument for pi. Maybe we should start thinking of modular stuff like this a little more as including negatives. Maybe this range we're saying goes from like up to pi, and here's sort of like a negative stretch of right there, where we're going between 0 to pi, back down in a negative way. Sounds weird, but if we think of how stretches of it are that amount before, all of these stretches are like the pi that's the positive stretch there, or another pi that follows in a flipped way. Here, similar things with these other trig functions. Not everything is circular like that, though. One thing that is that equation on the wall where I say e to the I pi plus 1 equals 0. That has a circular enough way that, and yes, I do need to write more equations on this wall, and I probably have a marker around, so if anyone suggests an equation that they think I've been talking about a lot and deserves to be on the wall, I'll consider throwing more equations up. Now, here, if we want to, that one says e to the I pi plus 1 equals 0. And it's also true that e to the I tau minus 1 equals 0. So some people say that one's cooler. I think they're about equally cool. If anything, this one's cooler because it uses each operation that are the simplest hyperoperations of addition, multiplication, and exponentiation and equality each once, whereas a subtraction in the mix or having the 1 on the other side feels a little less neat, if anything. So that one works in a neat form for either pi or tau, and that's sort of something to remember going forward. A lot of the equations that work for one can be phrased in the other, because it's just two of it. If I ever needed to substitute something where just pi is a coefficient in a formula, like let's say if the fact that 1 pi can be described as the ratio of a circumference to a diameter, whereas tau can be described as a circumference to a radius, kind of shows they're both easy to describe by cutting one in half or doubling it. But let's look at some of those classic circle equations, because that one is sort of easy to phrase either way. And tau gets a little bit of a point there, where a lot of the other circular equations are in terms of the radius. So would be a little neater. Here we have to call it 2 pi r if we want it in terms of the radius for the circumference. But what about area? Area is pi r squared. Area is obviously neater for pi. Do you want your area formula to suddenly be tau r squared over 2? Things like that get conveniently left out of this thing called, I forget if they included that, but I don't think they did, because they kind of tried to confirm their point they wanted to make in this thing called the Tau Manifesto. That's pretty cool, but I'm going to be criticizing it a little bit here, even though, full respect to whoever wrote it. Cool job. I like thoughtful philosophical essays like that. Nothing wrong with, they didn't do anything bad to society by writing this. Great thinking. But I'm going to disagree with a few of their points. So they make this manifesto about how tau is a better circle constant, and how if we look at a bunch of equations, this is in a really sloppy looking form. Is that really the best form we can get? Okay, here we go. If we get some equations, it looks a lot neater when we turn it into tau. There are some I agree with. For example, measuring things in radians could be nicer. But I would also argue, like I was saying, maybe we'll consider some of this a negative stretch of it. So we could be going to pi and then going to pi from the negative side. Like this is plus and minus pi, and these are the positive stretch leading up to there, and these are the negative stretch leading there, and you sort of have a flip there. Feels weird, but I'm going to recommend in one episode in the future that maybe we even need to try that on clocks. So don't be surprised if there's a combo class episode someday called, "Why don't clocks include negative numbers?" That's something you can think about in the meantime if you want to think for yourself about the thoughts that led me to a certain conclusion. AM versus PM's kind of annoying, but 24 hours is kind of a lot. We're kind of used to 12 hours in a way. How could we turn PM into the negative version of AM and get an even more circular version of patterns? Some patterns that I talk about on clocks would be way easier to describe with that. So some things, radians, I get their point, but there's other ways too. But they give all these examples of times where it gets neater for tau. Some of them I agree. In fact, someday we may even make a whole bonus video analyzing this paper, because I do respect them for writing this. But I think that they kind of must have, when they were writing through some of this, encountered, and here I guess maybe some of that comes up in this later portion, but they must have encountered many of the great pi formulas that don't work as well for tau and decided not to include those, because even when I amalgamate all of the new ones I learned about when I first read this that make Tau neater, there's still so many cool things I have seen Pi do, many of which I still have to show you folks, and many of which have shown up in different topics, that Tau wouldn't have done as neatly. And, for example, I know that we don't have a thing here called Tau formulas on Wolfram Math World, probably just because it's not as popular of a number. Maybe deserves a page like that, maybe, but there's not as many good ones necessarily. Pi has so many beautiful formulas that shockingly approach it, and ones that approach versions of it and powers of it, some of which wouldn't be much worse in Tau, a few of which would be neater with Tau. But there's a lot here that would be lost if we tried to just jump from, nah, let's get rid of Pi, let's just look at Tau more. There's some really beautiful, crazy variety of expressions that are more than half of these, are easier to phrase as Pi than Tau, in my opinion. So, I don't know. I'm up to ideas and proposals for changing notations. I love being like, we should change this thing about society. But I don't know about that one as much. I think that since they are two sides of the same coin, we should teach them together. We should teach that certain things, when you double Pi, get neater than Pi was. Or if you're talking more about Tau, certain things when you half it. But I don't know about not teaching Pi as much. Pi showed up a lot of cool places. Now, one interesting note is that Pi in the past, by some mathematicians, like I believe even Euler, used it more as a variable to mean like a circular ratio, almost like you'd use like theta means the angle I'm talking about here, or P means the prime I'm talking about here, or things like that. Or like, if you're using X and Y in a geometric way, Y might imply vertical. It was sort of like a variable that they used to mean circular ratios. And so a lot of older mathematicians like that would even use this symbol to refer to more than one number and specify which one they were talking about in the context. So let's see. Am I going to talk about variations of trig functions? At some point, not necessary right here. And somebody said we should have our hours in terms of Tau. Not sure exactly what you mean by that. But let's see. Somebody says they saw news about the 9th Dedekind number? Is there some mathematical news of some sort? Yeah, so a new number was discovered 2 days ago. The 9th of a sequence they were looking for. Okay, thank you for letting me know that. Let's see who that was. Who was that? Who noted that? Let me see. To Xnoob Speakable. Thank you for letting me know that. I will look into that later. Somebody said they want to make their own number system that divides by 0. And we're actually going to do an episode about that before long. About how it's something I hear a lot, and it's something I've tried before. And when you read more about it, you will see people have tried this in many ways, shapes, and forms. And there are systems that work with it, but they don't follow many of the neat rules we're used to. So the real numbers have a lot of cool rules that we associate with math, that when you introduce a new thing like that, you almost have to build your system from the ground up, from scratch, and see which rules still can you prove and know your rules still hold, as opposed to assuming any of the rules you already had still hold, like things like commutative properties or associative properties that we assume all numbers hold because we're used to real and maybe complex numbers. And yeah, wheel algebra is one example of a way of trying to get around dividing by 0. I like how in modular division that we've tried, it's almost more restrictive. You can't divide by anything that shares a factor in common with the mod, and that includes 0, because you could say 0 has all those factors technically. And so it's sort of like you can't divide by 0 and this bigger category that includes that when we tried the thing called modular division that I did in one episode. So good luck building your number system, but I do recommend try and prove as many of the rules you're working with so that you don't hit contradictions later. Like if you assume I made a symbol and I assume the commutative property still holds, there could be some contradiction you haven't found yet. It's very hard to prove that those things work. So good luck, but do not be shocked if contradictions slip in the cracks somewhere that cause paradoxes. Depending, what you try. It's still worth playing around with. And someone said, are our numbers mod aleph null or aleph 0, which is the smallest of sorts of the typical infinite numbers that can be talked about? And in a way, yes, you could say that our numbers are in the mod or in... Yeah, so they're in the mod, and then we're still expressing them in base 10. When we're talking about numbers in a mod, they're beyond the representation of those numbers. So when we write a number, sort of like a base 10 writing a mod infinity and stuff. And hyperreals, that's another cool type of number. But as usual, that type of number is so different than normal numbers. It has a lot of different properties. And the first time this might come up might be, I don't know which of these will come out first, but it's a similar theme that's going to come up when I do the 1 divided by 0 longer episode about what problems we might hit with that. And when we do the why is point infinite nines equal to 1? Because I want to make an episode about that in the near future, where I think there's sort of a misconception on both sides of the aisle there. I think that a lot of people are wrong that it can't be the same number. But then because of that, a lot of people fire back with that it must be the same number. And that's also wrong. It's not a symbol mustn't mean anything but what we decide the symbol means at a given moment. So in that episode, I want to go into how it is the most logical choice, but we're going to have to look at the philosophy of how things like that are choices that we then settle on the ones that don't have contradictions. And so that episode will come before too long. And one of those themes is how people will bring out things like, but there is a system where you can divide by 0, or but there is infinitesimal numbers. But there's not in the real numbers. And if you're throwing those in the mix, we're losing rules. So sort of an unfair game some beginnerish math people do is throw a concept that they've heard of into another ring without realizing that what they're implying is like they're talking about a world that might not have the commutative property or things like that. And that, we can assume on my channel, like with almost any math, unless you have already got an introductory essay clarifying otherwise, you can assume we're starting with the complex numbers and even more so the real number line out of those. So that's a little tangent. We're gonna, at some point, probably end up doing an episode deconstructing my favorite pi formulas, and maybe we'll throw some favorite tau formulas in there too. But I don't think it should replace pi. There are so many cool pi formulas. And of course, we can turn them into tau formulas, but some get neater. I would argue at least as many get messier. However, a lot of people are fans of Tau Day, and I don't have anything hugely against it, because I mean, I want them to think a little more before they jump the gun on being like sometimes I've said that I like pie more, and other people have assumed that means I haven't read the manifesto. But I did read it a while ago. So sometimes people who have the right answer, like that Tau is underrated, jump the gun a little bit and go to like, well, that means a lot of people are completely misled. Of course, part of the reason I can't blame anybody doing that is it's something I playfully do myself all the time, which is, half as a joke, half seriously, recommend ways in which I think we should change society someday. Like, we've done episodes on the main combo class channel. Some of the ones I presented in grade -1 as like, these are changes that would be cool for society, included like base 10 is not ideal, base 6 or 12 would be better. The calendar system is not ideal. The way clocks have a 12 on top could be a 0 on top. Certain letters in the English language are unnecessary. So I'm certainly the type of guy to be like, here's a weird change we should do or whatever. So I'm not going to blame the people who say we should change how we teach to include Tau more. But they should try and make sure that they're, not kicking out pi too quickly. Because, just as the simplest example, just imagine that we will have to teach the area formula as area equals tau over 2 r squared. So we're going to go into more details about pi a lot of the time, and I will try and throw some taus in there as well. We'll also go into more details about those perfect numbers I was talking about. Those are very neat and will show up in the future. And maybe we will coin more mathematical holidays. There's a lot of stuff that happened today you could have named a holiday after. Saxophone is patented on this is the day it still is for me. That might be yesterday for some of you. Birthdays, you got in this day in math. Well, now it's on June 29th, 28th. Oh, whoa, look. Somebody mentioned this mathematician in the new findings are named after that guy. I'm going to have to look those up after the stream, the new numbers that were discovered. Now, this is also a coincidence that Fermat's last theorem, the proof of it was presented 30 years from about a week ago. And I guess also a different amount of years before today, a few years after that, a prize was awarded to Andrew Wiles, who solved that magical thing. Other cool mathematical things happened today. Arguably, these are less calendar-dependent mathematical holidays, like this mathematician who was like one of the founders of what's called measure theory that's not calendar dependent. It is to a degree, but it was, about that amount of years since then. It is calendar dependent with leap days and stuff, because if you go back a certain amount of years, it could be a day or something off. Our calendar is so lopsided. All right, well, what other holidays are today that aren't mathematical? There's even a few other ones that I did want to note. We got National Tapioca Day. Tapioca is pretty cool. Stuff's interesting to cook with. I've cooked my own tapioca pudding using those little balls, and they're weird. They come white and opaque, and then you cook them, and they get clear. And you soak them first. What should the 13th month be called? Well, I was mostly quoting in my episode about that a system that's already proposed. So I mentioned my own different system in that episode that I thought would be cool, but the 13-month one is called the International Fixed Calendar, is the one I was quoting. And that one names it Sol, like S-O-L after the sun. And it's the middle month that gets the different name. There's also a holiday called Year Day. That's pretty cool. You get a new holiday. Year Day doesn't have a day of the week. Some people don't like that. I think that would be awesome. So, let's see. Oh, there's also, what else do we have here? Insurance Awareness Day sounds really boring, but I guess it's good to have that sort of awareness day, I guess. I feel like out of all the things to be aware of in the world, insurance awareness, you want to be insured for stuff because it's so dumb that that should be a day. But in the weird society nowadays, if you're not insured for the right thing, especially like health insurance or car insurance or things like that, it can cost an insane amount of money and bankrupt you. So in the system we live in, you do maybe need an insurance awareness day. Caps lock day. I don't know about that one. Caps lock's a little overused sometimes. I always feel really cheesy when I put an all capital word in the titles, but it feels like part of the necessary YouTube game almost. And I don't know if I've ever done that on the main combo class channel, because those I always feel like I want a more artistic title to them. So I don't know if I've ever put like one of those all caps words, but I feel like the videos where creators just like succumb to the YouTube game and put a lot of all caps, for some reason can get more clicks. But maybe not with the audience that I want to cultivate. Maybe having a chiller vibe of title works better. The thing is, I don't mind an all caps title if it's like shorter and it's like something wild and new. Like if your video's called like Extreme Infinity, then that could be like an all caps title I could imagine looking cool. But now you get the mix of the casual where it's like, yo, you won't believe what went wrong today, with the all caps vibe. So now there's a lot of titles on YouTube are like, yo, oh my God, you won't believe this crazy casual wild gone wrong thing. Oh, it's a weird game on YouTube. I just like making my videos, so luckily I make a lot of videos, so different ones do well or don't do well in different ways, and I'm usually busy making the next video, so I don't need to worry about which ones do too good or bad. On a month-to-month scale, we're growing awesomely, and this channel is now past 152,000 combo lords, many of which watch my shorts more than the other ones, and I actually ironically want more of the random shorts viewers, now that they've found this channel, to find my combo class channel. And so I started putting some shorts on there, which I'm going to get back to in a bit, without putting them to notifications or subscriptions so they don't bug the people who just want the full ones. But YouTube really cares about how many shorts you've put on there so far, partially because they know who to recommend it to better, and partially because they just trust you more or something. So you can put a better short on a channel that hasn't put out shorts before, and it won't do as good as a worse short on a channel that YouTube has liked the shorts of before. But whatever we're doing is working, so I love you all. You are so awesome for joining me for the ride, and like I've said, cooler and cooler things will come over the grades. I have not yet made topics about most of my favorite video ideas that I want to do. And I'm going to need more of a team to help me someday because I have more ideas than I have time to film. So we have notebooks and documents of ideas. So once I slowly get the right team assembled and such, we'll have a lot of cool content. But some of it will be other stuff too. I am going to release some music on this channel at times. I'm going to release some written works that include fictional things. But there will always also be our cool mathematical and scientific things for people who like those. So, I mean, this channel, no promises. This channel, I do whatever I want to do. The combo class channel is guaranteed, at least for a while, that will have pretty, the type of thing I've been doing on there of my math and science episodes. So, and I've actually had many YouTube channels in the past. I shared one or two on Patreon a while ago, and That's actually the next thing that I planned on sharing on Patreon last week, but sorry, Patreon people, I still need to put it up now, but I have a few to put up now, which is the reason I didn't put anything out in the past week or two on the Patreon, because I'm setting up this membership thing YouTube's going to give me a bonus for. So there's going to be that membership thing coming here on YouTube too. I'll make an announcement when it comes out, so I won't waste time on it now, but there will be, you know, an announcement video that I'm going to need to make in a day or two that will sound a little sales pitchy, but is related to YouTube's giving me a cool bonus. And of course, I'll do something fun in the video too. I'll make it worth watching. But what I am going to put out next and link more of to those people, as well as to the Patreon people still, is some of my old videos are unlisted, but still uploaded, so I can like unlist them. I can make them public again, or on channels that nobody knows about. I have some channels from back in the day that have like 20 videos or something, none of which have more than 100 views, like literally all like 1 or 2 digit views, channels with like, you know, 1 or 2 subscribers. And then before Combo Class, I don't think I ever had a channel with more than 20 or 30 subscribers. And I had some I had put like 30 or 40 videos on. So it can be hard, you know? I was surprised when people enjoyed Combo Class so well, but it was also partially because there was a little more method to my madness on this channel. And I was seeing it a little bit as like a service to the world that I wanted to do in a somewhat methodical way, despite my chaos. So it is a little more planned out than some of my older channels. I'll link more of those in the future. There were some clips of some stuff like that in the one documentary-ish episode I've made so far on the Combo Class channel, which will come once in a while, because I have a lot of rare footage from my past. A lot of it wasn't ever on YouTube either. And so some clips were in a long documentary-like episode I made at the end of grade -1. So make sure you've seen that on the main Combo Class channel if you want to get a little glimpse of the rare past. If you want a glimpse of the rare past, let me see real quick. So this would probably just be for a really particular era. The video footage I know is more interesting to watch, and I have a lot of video footage of crazy stuff from my past as well. But I do have a box of photos right here, so just so people can see, I just want people to at least see one of when I was in middle school and had really long hair. But here, I'll show a few random photos of when I was smaller. Here when I was really small. Here I am getting a little bit bigger. So look, that shirt says Lucky 13. All the people who think 13 is unlucky or something, sorry, I've liked it since back then. Where was I when I had my longer hair? Because when I was in middle school, I had hair like down to my shoulders almost. Okay, I'll show more of these later. I just need to find at least one that shows what I'm talking about. There's me randomly in the background of a photo. It's like a photo of a few people, so it's kind of hard to see, but there I am in the background when I had really long hair. So, who knows? Maybe it'll grow back someday. In fact, I realized recently that I cut my own hair during the grade -1 finale I mentioned recently. Like, I cut it myself just without even looking, and then later, over the next couple weeks, sometimes would cut an extra chunk off if I saw it sticking out in the mirror. And then I guess I got it close enough where it like grew in okay enough and I had gotten the weirdest bits out that I forgot or procrastinated to ever actually get a haircut fixed by like a friend or shop or anything. So this is still my haircut that I gave myself without really even barely looking in a mirror. Only a few mirror snips after the fact. So I should look at this thing again and do some edits. In any case, those were the main topics I wanted to cover today. And there's plenty more we could say about pi and tau and other cool things. But I wanted to do a sort of miniature stream just to shout out a few thoughts about those, as well as the fact I realized that we can also consider it perfect number day, because of good old 6 and 28. And a reminder, if you haven't seen it on the main combo class channel, sometimes watch my episode about why 13 months would surprisingly work better. So I'm going to wrap up this stream in a bit. I'm going to read about that new type of number they discovered later. I'll be back with some more fun stuff tomorrow. I'll be filming with my main camera guy, Carlo, although maybe mostly working on the next combo class episode. So we'll see what sort of bonus content might come out. I'll keep you all posted throughout the next little videos and streams that I'll inevitably do. And there's also the Discord and stuff like that for people who want to chat further. But I think at this point I'm going to log off, take one more peek at my chat. And I've also had very short hair, to whoever noted the hair of the comments. There was one time it got shaved at a party by a friend, and he used the wrong setting on the razor and buzzed part of it really low and was like, you're either going to have all of your hair like a buzz cut or one part's going to have a buzz cut. And I was like, well, we better do all of it then. So I've had it all the way from buzz cut to like longer than that photo. We'll see more rarities about that in the future. In any case, I love you all so much. To everybody who joined this or watches in the future, you're my awesome combo lords, and I'll catch you again